Hey everyone. So let's go ahead and dive into a horror movie today, shall we? I've watched a lot of different movies on this channel. I reviewed many films. However, one genre of movies I've never reviewed on this channel, not even in the old days of my movie reviewing, was a horror film. Not because I had anything against horror, the opposite. I'm a big fan of horror movies. If you've seen my channel, you know that I do love my horror films. They're fun movies with fun ideas, and they're fun to sit through. I just never got the chance to do a full review of a horror flick. Well, today we're going to do that. Today we're going to take a look at the most recent horror flick I saw, and definitely one that's worth reviewing, Weapons. Yes, sirree, Weapons. This is one of many anticipated horror films to come out during this decade. It seems that the 2020s is a pretty big year for horror movies. So many of them were hits, so many of them were acclaimed. It seems like the horror genre is really starting to have a little bit of an improvement with itself over the years. We've had amazing horror flicks in the past, and it's great to know that there are still some we're getting in the future that are worth mentioning as well. This year in general looks like it's been fun for horror too. We had of course, had the film Sinners, which was a huge hit and definitely a great film. And now we have Weapons, which so far has been proven to be well acclaimed and successful. And thus, of course, with its success and with me having a love for horror, I just definitely knew it was something I can watch. I just gotta see, is this movie as scary as it could be? Does it take full potential of the frightening stuff it has? Is Weapons the kind of movie I can love to watch? Will I put this with all the other great horror movies I've seen? Who knows? It could be great, it could be good, or it could suck ass. You never know with horror films nowadays. Anyway, let's do nothing else but get reviewing. So of course, let's look at the genres. There really are only two to look at for this movie: horror and mystery. Let's talk about the mystery aspect of this movie first, because it's definitely a big deal for the film. It's a mystery horror. It's a film that follows a interesting mystery that our main characters have to figure out, and of course we had to figure out too. That's sort of what mystery movies are like. But many people wonder about how many horror movies these days we're getting that follow the idea of the mystery never being answered. It seems that a lot of acclaimed movies have that. Questions that aren't answered. Things that don't make sense. Things that you really don't forward with. Many of us wonder why such films are able to get such a love from audiences and critics. Why do the movies that have things that is never answered, how come those are successful? I think it has more so to do with the fact that it's good to know those are things that aren't too irritating with the story. A mystery that doesn't answer all of its questions is fine if the movie still works in the narrative. They don't affect the story's narrative too much. And for the case of Weapons, it's a pretty damn good one. The mystery in this movie is fun. It's about these kids who are at this elementary school, and one day they all go missing. You have to follow the whole movie figuring out sort of what happened to them. It's sort of that, where did they go? How did they go missing? What's happening? Why are they like this? It's sort of a how, when, where, and why kind of situation. And all of that has to be answered by the end of the film. So as we follow along, it's more so that we're getting these little bits, and I do think this is something I love. I love those movies that have this sort of mystery with things that don't make sense at first, but are later explained in a later scene. They're not explained immediately. We get confused on something doesn't make sense, and it's like, what's happening there? And then as the film moves on, when it finally is explained later on, it's fun. You have all that ambition, and you have all that interest with the situation. Throughout this time, you're like, how did that happen? And then when it's finally answered, you're like, oh, so that's why that. And that's what this movie does. It answers its questions late, and that's fun to see. There's a lot of questions this movie has to answer. There's a lot of aspects to the situation that these fellas have to do. So throughout the movie, of course, our characters have to each go look, will find as many clues as they can to the case, and when they find a clue, they write it in their notebook and do a dance. Sorry, got nostalgic when I heard that. Anyway, what happens is they each we follow each um situation in the problem with the kids going missing. There's different aspects to why it happened, and we're seeing like bits of the situation, and it's like, what's going on? When did that happen? And they're not all answered until by the near end of the film. It's little things mixed in one at a time, and then by the end of the film, they all come together, and that's great. One of the best kind of mystery films to have. The one where there's tiny pieces involved in the story, and they don't all come together and make sense until later on. That's what I like in mystery films, the kind that make the mystery spread out. It's not solved immediately. It's like one situation is seen, and that's not answered until later, very later on. I mean, I guess that is sort of the point of a mystery film, but who knows? Sometimes a mystery movie just likes to have one thing going for it and just focus on that. But a thing that has different parts to it, that's good to see. All right, now let's of course talk about the big aspect of the film, the horror. How does this movie work as a horror movie? Dare I say it, I think I might actually been more terrified with this movie than Sinners. I know, you might be thinking, why am I comparing this to Sinners? Just because they both came out the same year? Well, yes, and naturally speaking, Sinners is a huge horror hit this year. Many consider it the best horror film that he got this year. But with Weapons coming out, part of me wonders if maybe that will change with Weapons, because it's really a lot more frightening. Not just because it's gorier. It is gorier, don't get me wrong. There are lots of bloody moments in the movie. It's mostly stabbings, getting shot, getting your face completely ripped off. That did happen in the movie once. It's disturbing. If you aren't a fan of violence, then you probably already walked away. Even just looking at the movie poster will have you going, nope, nope, nope. So yeah, any person who doesn't like violence in a movie, doesn't like to see blood and guts everywhere, you're not gonna want to go through this. However, there are people like me who do like seeing that happen in a movie. I sound sinister when I say that, but anyway, no, it's fun in this movie because it's not the only thing that can be scary. It's not one of those films that overstates its welcome with the gore. We get a lot of gore in it, but unlike other films like Terrifier or Smile, I don't know, those kind of movies that overdo to have gore all throughout 24/7, this movie doesn't. It scares us with the frightening image of our of the demons or whatever that we have to be feared of. It kind of gives us that fear of just the creepy tensions with the situation, and the fact that it doesn't make sense at first does make things scarier. That's another good aspect for a mystery film. When it's put in a horror flick, it's good to know that the mystery involving something makes it scarier. And I like that this movie does that. It has a mystery with things, some things that aren't answered, and because of that, it makes them all around scarier. And even when they are answered, it's like it kind of still works as scary because now you know it's like, okay, so how can we fix it? Well, I don't know, man. There's lots of tension because what it's not answered until a moment where there's no time to really breathe and get that. It's just the time where it's like, oh, okay, oh shit. That's what we get in this movie. It's great, yeah. I think the idea surrounding it is more confusing, I guess you could argue. Maybe the idea is not as easy to understand as something like Sinners, but it definitely makes for a scarier plot. And I can thank this movie for making its plot not rely on jump scares or gore, like seems to be the case in a lot of horror movies nowadays. This movie does have jump scares and gore, but the sense of getting scared does come from actual tension. It doesn't come from just jump scares and blood everywhere. It just has those bits in the film, and the scariness just comes from the mere tension surrounding the idea. That's a good horror movie to watch. One that scares you with its tension and not just with its jump scares and violence all the time. So yeah, Weapons will give you that kind of creep scare just being creepy as opposed to shocking. That's a good kind of horror film to have. One that proves to be more creepy than shocking. Now let's talk about the plot of this movie. How does the overall plot play out? Well, like I said before, the main story of this film involves around a bunch of kids in an elementary school that one night all apparently go missing, except for one boy who just barely speaks and barely wants to pay attention to anything. So naturally, the teacher Garner plays, she has to try to figure this out. What happened to the kids? Why are why is Alex, the one kid who's still there, not barely speaking at all or acting concerned? So yeah, that's kind of what happens. She has to be worried about that. However, it's not just her. This movie actually goes for the Pulp Fiction route of having chapters, each present for a different character's perspective. That's what we get in this movie. We get different perspective. We get like six separate stories, arcs, following six different people who are involved with this situation. That is amazing. I love those kind of movies, the ones that are separated in chapters revolving around characters. And yeah, we have six characters in this movie that we get a chapter with, and we see how each of them are involved with this problem. And by the end, of course, is when everything comes together and all defeated. That's great. That's a great kind of story to work with. I like that. And it's great because it's easy to explain. So, of course, we first start with Julia Garner's side, what she deals with. She's a alcoholic school teacher who drinks a lot but tries her hardest, I guess. I don't know. She's concerned, I guess. That's all that matters. She has concern. She's naturally just trying to figure this out herself, but can't because police are like, mind your own business. And it's like, is this my business, my school, whatever. So yeah, we have to see how she's gonna handle this. What will happen to her? Will she become possessed too? Will she figure it out? Well, then we have to follow another story arc. That being one of the parents whose kid went missing. It's Josh Brolin as a parent. And we see his perspective of how, of course, one of them was his son. He has concern with this. He tries to figure things out. He tries to narrow down how everything happened. Tries to put together what happened. Try to line everything. He's trying to solve this as a regular mystery. He's going for a Sherlock Holmes route or whatever with this. He's trying to really clue everything up. Yeah, he wants to figure this out. He wants to use his skills or whatever. And so yeah, we have to see that story go for it. And then we get to the third arc, which is for the police officer, who we see is apparently a very struggling police officer. And of course, he's an officer. He has to investigate this. And as he does, he investigates this while also dealing with his job, everyone hating him and whatnot. It's hard for him because it's like he sees everything and has to really, he's on his own. He doesn't have a partner. It's just him. That's gotta suck, right? You have to solve a horror case when you don't have a partner. Imagine that. Cops in horror movies that don't have partners. Those are the worst kind of cops to be. We then on to the fourth story, which is for a random criminal that he has dealt with named James, who in this movie kind of just looks like the kind of person I would see you think this when you see him, you think that maybe he has a sidekick who's short, has a beard, and doesn't speak at all. But no, he's an introvert too, and he likes to steal things and pawn them or whatever. But when he breaks into a house to find stuff to steal, that's of course the house that is where all the kids are, is where the creepy stuff happens. That's the house that he goes to. We find out that the kids were all in that one house that has a possession situation happening. Why is that? Well, then we gotta focus. We have now on to the fifth character, who is I think the school principal, was the principal, secretary. He had a part in the school as well. It's Benedict Wong as some big role at that school, as he is of course trying to figure this out too, but naturally he has to deal with all the teachers and all the parents who are complaining to him. It's hard to do. But then eventually he finds the house, and finally he ends up getting the possessed treatment too. So then he becomes this creepy dude with big pop eyes, blood everywhere, and starts feeding, chewing, eating humans. Weird enough. And then onto the sixth arc, which is the main boy, Alex, the boy that was the only one who showed up at school. That story is where everything comes together. Why is this all happening? What's going on? Apparently he has an aunt who comes over. She has this weird voodoo crap thing going for that she uses to possess his parents. and then uses it to bring all the students at his school to her home, starts this devil cult or whatever she is. It's not explained what her motive is. She's just into cults or whatever. She has this weird devil mindset going forward that she wants to use to possess the kids' parents as well as all the students, as well as any other people that investigates her. She's a creepy Anne who, at the same time, looks pretty nerdy. And it's definitely makes it all the more creepier, if I'm being honest. How they don't make her look creepy, they make her look like an innocent Anne who has devious intentions. I have an aunt too. Hope she doesn't have devious intentions. Should just. No, no, no. There's no way. No. Well, at the end, she's defeated by apparently the kid getting a hold of her voodoo thing and making it to where all the kids then end up feeding on her. So that's how she's killed off. And then at the end, they manage to break it or whatever, and then that reverses everything. It's at that point, it just ends there. It doesn't really go any forward. That's it. So movie's over. And that's the whole story. I literally just analyzed the whole plot. I don't usually do that with movies, but this movie's plot is honestly great. I really love the way this movie's plot is. Like I said, I love a movie that can do a plot near into chapters with that each flow perfectly. So yeah, Weapons has that kind of plot involved with it. It's really good. We open with what happens, and we see different characters' perspectives of how they're attached with the situation. Then at the end, most of them come together to defeat him. Some die, some survive. But at the end, it all just goes down. And that's our horror flick. That's the kind of film that really makes it work. Really, there's nothing else I can say. I just love this plot. I love how it's done. Is it flawed? Yeah, maybe some of those characters weren't that interesting. I mean, the criminal person, he has a connection, but not a huge one. He's not 100% connected. He's just a minor. I feel like he wasn't really needed that much. He's just a criminal who happens to have broken into a house in the situation. He's not as important as the others, so I could argue maybe his plot wasn't entirely needed. This movie also goes for that comedy route. It's not a comedy film, but there are some moments in the film that are using a comedic effect. It's like, funny. I mean, yeah, a lot of movies do that, even when they're not wanting to be comedies, but I don't know, maybe at some points it didn't need it. You know, even at the end when she's defeated, that's has comedic bits involved with it. Dare I say, it wasn't all needed. It was funny, but it wasn't needed for this sake. But then again, those are just little minor complaints. They're problems, but the story is still really great, and I still really love how it's played out. And yeah, there's nothing else I can say. The plot is great, the horror is great, the mystery is pretty good. I think I've made my point clear. Weapons is better than the movie Sinners. That is a statement. I know it's a weird comparison, but they're both popular horror movies to come out this year. I love both of them. But I think this movie succeeds more. It's scarier. It's more endearing. It's quite an adventure to go with. And I just think this movie really handles itself really fun. It's such a fun horror film to watch. Even if you don't have a chance, even if you aren't going to get scared by it, you really will be amused by how the stories goes. I just think this movie did its story nicely. Again, not perfectly. It had those little flaws, but those really flaws are really the only ones I can remember. That's it. The only problems is just one character's arc wasn't entirely needed and some moments of comedy. Those are just the problems with the movie. They will probably affect you from calling this one of the best horror movies of all time. It's not, okay? It's not one of the best horror movies of all time. But dare I say it is the best horror movie we've gotten this year. And maybe the best one we've gotten in the past 2 years. 3 years, maybe? 4? Maybe for the whole decade? I'll look back at that. But for now, I can just say it's a really great movie. 8 out of 10. Really loved it. It's definitely up there with my favorite movies this year. Let's see what more come out. Hopefully there are some more good ones. And hopefully in terms of horror, the genre will just continue improving. Maybe we'll finally see more films that could be considered up there with one of the best horror flicks ever. You know, it comes once in a while when something like that happens, but With how many horror films we've been getting put out this decade, maybe there will be one that come out soon that can become part of the idea, one that will be considered as amazing of a horror flick as some of the more acclaimed classics. Maybe this one isn't, but with how great I found it, I see it as a possibility. Possibility that horror will become more and more popular to the point where it's pretty much this decade's version of sci-fi. Or like last decade, action movies were the big thing. Maybe horror's just gonna be the big thing for the rest of this decade. There's a lot of big movies coming out, but mostly sequels and remakes. When it comes to original ideas, horror is one of those genres we can mostly count on to see get out of. It seems like when we want original films, horror genre is where we get them. Not a bad thing, horror's fun to watch. I like to get scared. I wish I was scary, but I'm a pussy who just likes to get scared.